to Horsefly Chronicles Radio with Julia and Philip Siracusa, sponsored by Carnation, airing live on the United Public Radio Network on 105.3 FM in New Orleans. This show's entrance has been edited, produced, and directed by Gwen Clapper from Perfect Trust Productions, LLC. You can find us at perfecttrustproductions.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Monday night segment of Horsefly Chronicles Radio with myself, Julia Siracusa, and Phil Siracusa. We're broadcasting live from the International Public Radio and the United Public Radio Network on 105.3 FM from New Orleans. This evening's show is fully sponsored by Carnation, so we want to thank them for their sponsorship. We love them. You can also go into all of our Facebook stations, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, UFO Undercover with Joe Montaldo, News on the Flip Side, also Twitch, SoundCloud, and Podbean. You can also go over to our group, Horsefly Chronicles Radio. Get in, join if you haven't. And if you have any questions for our guests, please ask. So today, guys, we have a really terrific guest, right?
Yeah.
So please welcome Bill Slevin to the show. Bill is the founder and lead paranormal investigator of Paranormal Existence Research Society. That's PERS. Bill has worked in the paranormal field for over 30 years. He's been part of well over 500 residential investigations. That's a lot.
Wow.
He's been seen on an episode of Ghost Asylum, numerous podcasts and TV interviews, and was filmed for a documentary for the Discovery Channel airing early 2022. He's also an educator in the field, so please let's welcome Bill to the show.
Welcome.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for coming on, Bill.
Yes.
Wow, you have quite a resume there. And, 500 cases and, you do a lot of residential. We like that.
Yes.
When we always like to see what you have to say and your experiences. So we always ask our guests, take us to the beginning for our listeners. How did you get started? What was your first experience? Was it adolescence?
Well, I was real young when I was always into horror, paranormal, anything like that. When I was little, I was never scared of the movies and scared of that stuff. I had some of my own experiences that I kind of wanted to learn a little more about them. Back then, it was a little different because you didn't have TV shows. It wasn't out, in the mainstream and everything. So it wasn't as easy as it is today to get into it. I started probably my first residential case was around 1989, 1990. So I was doing, just some little research on the side with some people I knew here and there when I lived up in New Jersey. And then some of my friends knew somebody who had a team and they were short a guy for the night. So they asked if I wanted to go and do a residential case, which is what I really wanted to do. They were just hard to find back then. So I went on that case and it was a lot to take in. It was very different than going out into the public. And it's what I really realized I wanted to do. I wanted to go help people. That's why, I still like to go out and do public stuff, but I do as much residential as I can to try to help people.
When you say help people, can you define that?
Sure. People contact us, especially now, since the one good thing about TV is that it did bring it into the mainstream. So people are a little more open to contacting us for help. They're not as scared. Sometimes it's paranormal. A lot of times it's not. But to be able to go to somebody's home and go in and check everything out and tell them if it is paranormal or if it's not, and help them either get rid of it or understand what could be causing it, just the relief on their face. Some of them are truly frightened because, of course, they watch TV, and we all watch the shows. I like the shows too, but they are very dramatic, and they scare people a bit. Everything's a demon, everything is crazy, and people don't know the difference. And I like to help them a lot. During the day, I'm an IT and marketing director for a psychiatric drug and alcohol treatment facility for the past 9 years. So that has helped me a lot.
Yeah.
Understanding the psyche of the people. I definitely agree.
Exactly.
So if it's paranormal activity, what do you do to help the family?
Well, me and my team, we go in, we don't I'm an IT, so I have a ton of equipment, but in most people's homes, we don't use a lot of that equipment. We go by our empath abilities first. That is the best thing you could do. And then we'll use just sometimes audio, video, maybe some scientific devices like an EDI that just, gauges temperature changes, things like that. And we'll go in and really sit with them. We're like counselors. We'll go in and spend 2, 3, 4 hours with them the first time just to listen, because sometimes we're the first people that they actually get to talk to and feel comfortable because we're not judging them. So I like to let them get comfortable with us too and tell us everything. The more comfortable they are, the more they tell us. Sometimes they hide things like maybe there was a psychiatric illness, or maybe there was addiction, or maybe there was something that possibly could have caused this. We need to know that. If you don't tell us, it's harder to find out. So the more we sit with them, the more we talk to them, the more they open up to us.
The more they're going to start trusting you.
Exactly.
Okay.
Mhm.
So let's say you have a patient, a patient. Listen to me. I think he's a doctor now. But let's say you go into a home and there are people with disabilities, but what's happening in the home is no thought of their own. So how would you go about that?
Well, again, we go on our own abilities first. A lot of times we'll walk through the house on our own before they tell us where they've had problems or what exact problems they had where, so we could see what we could pick up on first to match it. Most of the time we do not do a full-blown investigation. A lot of times we don't feel the need for it, because a lot of people, if there's something in there, they just want it out. They don't want to know who it is, what it is, why it's there. We only do that if there's a real need for it. So we'll sit down, we'll talk to them, we'll see what's going on, and then we'll do a small investigation, and then we'll cleanse the house if we think something's there, depending on what it is. We use sage, we use Palo Santo. I know a lot about energy, so we'll use a singing bowl to cleanse the energy in the house, because a lot of times it's energy. It's not paranormal, or it's a mix. You could tell. We'll ask a lot of questions. We get very personal with them. You'll see a lot of times people are fighting a lot between each other in the home. And if you cleanse the energy, it'll fix that. A lot of teams, some of them don't know about the energy, because they learn more from TV shows. And it's something I like to do because it always helps. Even if we don't feel there's 100% something paranormal in there, we'll probably cleanse the energy anyway, just to fix everything in the house.
That's the first time I heard someone say cleanse the energy. That's a different phrase. So
do you have any mediums on your team? I'm sure you do.
I don't have any directly on my team. I have a bunch that I have worked with, and if I need one, I could contact one. I tend to not use them unless I have to.
Oh, okay.
Not that I have any problem with them. It's just that I don't like to go in. Sometimes they could pull in different things, and I don't want to confuse it. Okay. I'll pull them in if I really need to.
Gotcha.
When you talk about cleanse the energy, I find that very interesting. What does that mean?
Well, I mean, everything is energy. We're all energy. When you use a singing bowl, the sound that the singing bowl makes, it will actually remove the negative energy in the house. And a lot of it, I've known a lot about energy, but my wife she doesn't work with the paranormal stuff. She has her own stuff. She works a lot with crystals and feng shui. She knows a lot about energy. And it was one thing I didn't 100% believe her with, But I used to bring flowers home and they would die in like 2 days. And I used to joke, hey, I'm not going to buy your flowers anymore. You kill them all the time. And she said, yeah, she said it was the energy. So she used the singing bowl. She used sage. She cleansed the whole energy in the house. And I swear to you, since that day, the flowers last 2, 3, 4 weeks sometimes.
Wow.
It is a big difference. I mean, I've seen homes where we've used the singing bowl and done everything, and even though there was nothing paranormal in the house, the people were having a lot of conflict, especially if you have teenagers and stuff. And after that, they weren't having as much conflict anymore. They were a lot nicer to each other.
So the singing bowl help?
Yeah, singing bowl is great. That's a really, really good thing to cleanse the home of energy. I mean, of course, sage and everything too, but a singing bowl is something a lot of people don't use, and it really does work. I found it to work amazing. I mean, I've done so many homes, and very rarely do we have to go back more than once.
Wow. Okay. When I use sage, I feel like things get worse. Have you ever experienced anything like that, like with sage?
Not with me, but with we try to also teach the people. It's their home. I had a team member, my team. I was good friends with him for about 10 years. His name was Tim Yancey. He had unfortunately passed away last November, and he was very, very big into this, and he had violent haunting when he was young. He used to actually investigate with Ed and Lorraine Warren. He knows a lot about this. He was very big on counseling people, and he said, "You've got to teach the people to cleanse the house themselves because it's their problem. If you don't teach them, then they're just going to keep bringing it back." And that's one of the things. The only time I've ever seen people really have an issue with a cleansing is we cleanse it, they continue to do what they did when we left, and it comes back.
Of course.
Yeah. Or if they go to cleanse it, they just take the sage and they wave it around. They don't realize that a lot of it is their intent in their mind. That they could say it out loud or say it themselves. It's their intent on what they want the sage to do is how it works in the house.
What if you have a family that sometimes it's hard to follow, like it's hard to follow the instructions that the paranormal team are giving you. Like, do you have a family that just needs extra help? Because you said you don't really go back.
Well, no, we'll go back as many times as they want. I've just never, I haven't had that many experiences where they had, continuing issues. There's been plenty of places. I stay in touch with almost everybody whenever I can, and we'll go over there anytime, but we try to teach them, and I give them a piece of paper that gives them detailed instructions on how to do it. And we leave them with sage or Palo Santo, whatever you use in the house, we leave with them. And we show them how to do it, and we teach them how to do it. Because sometimes we've run into a lot of people that are like collectors. They go out and they buy antiques, and they think maybe that has something to do with it. So we teach them how to cleanse each piece when they bring it home. It's just something that's just good to do. I mean, even if you're not having something, it's always good to cleanse the home.
True.
Very interesting.
Now, have you on all these residential cases that you've done, is there one case, or there's got to be a few of them, that really has left a mark on you and your team, one that you cannot forget?
Yes. There's a bunch. Anything with kids involved always going to leave a mark with you because it's a different level, but out of all the cases I've done, I've had about, it is rare, but I've had about 5 cases that were demonic cases. Again, they are very rare. I know a lot of people, some people may argue with me a little bit on it, but it is a rare thing. But I have been involved. The first case I was ever involved in, my first residential case, turned out to be a demonic case with an attack on the other investigator with us. So it was those type of things. Like, there are things when we go around to conventions and schools and libraries and teach people. And a lot of the questions I get are, what's the craziest thing you've seen? What's this? And, do the things in the TV and the movies, are they real? And a lot of people understand that movies and TVs, they have to make it a little more dramatic and entertaining. But I can tell you, I have seen some things that you probably have only seen in movies. and it will stick with you for a long time. And I don't even expect people to believe when I tell them unless you were there to see it, because I wouldn't believe it if somebody was telling me.
We believe you.
Yeah, but it does
Give
stick
us,
with you.
We believe you.
give us an example of one thing you've seen that no one would believe.
One of the demonic cases I was on, I was there when they actually brought a priest into the home, not to do an exorcism on a person, but it was an exorcism on the house. I had never seen this before at the time. I was still, a lot newer to this. And people talk, and this will spark a lot of controversy, orbs. I'm on probably almost 40 groups on Facebook that I go in, and I try to help people. I really do try to educate them and tell, but everybody wants to believe every piece of dust is an orb in their house. And, so I try to explain a true orb. I've seen them maybe 2 or 3 times in my life. And this orb, when the priest was doing an exorcism in the house, this orb appeared out of nowhere. It was probably about the size of a golf ball. And it's not like you see on these things. It is a full-blown 3D ball of energy that emits its own light. And it was moving so erratically around the room as he was reading certain, the exorcism prayers. It was flying all over the place. It flew into the corner. It tried to manifest into a giant shadow. It disappeared. A couch picked up off the ground and flew across the room into the wall.
Wow.
And I have, especially up to that point, I have never seen anything like that. You see maybe something knock over or fall off the counter or things like that, but I've never seen something that big, and again, these were things that happened almost 30 years ago. So it wasn't about fame, and it wasn't about trying to fake it for TikTok and for things like that. Nowadays you have to be more cautious because everybody's faking everything or trying to, get some kind of fame with it. But these were things that they were not faked. And if they were, I give them credit. I don't know how the hell they did it.
That's interesting.
Amazing.
Yeah, no, orbs, dust particles, water vapors. There's there are ways to tell the difference, and most of those are dust particles. But there are,
Right.
we know the real orbs, obviously. But
what about the color orbs?
Yeah, what about that?
The color orbs, when you see them on film and video, first of all, it's very rare to capture a real orb on video. The problem is a colored orb on a film. There's so many things that can explain what it is, from every type of lens flare to a bug, a dust, whatever it is. It just happens to grab the lighting, whether it was your flash, whether it was the IR lights, and they can make colors. I've seen them in all different types of colors, but the real difference is it is a 3D ball. It will emit its own light. So the things you see on people's closed, circuit TVs and all those Ring doorbells and everything, the problem with that is what you're seeing is something that's reflecting the IR light off the camera. So it makes it round. It could be a bug, but it makes it round because it's glowing. And most of the time it's translucent or transparent, though that's not what a real orb is. I mean, I've seen them and they don't look anything like that. So it's hard. I mean, I can't say none of them are, but I don't know anybody who's ever captured one on film, a true orb that they could say this was definitely an orb. It's always at times where you're not expecting it or you weren't expecting it. Back then we didn't have as much equipment. It was a little different.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of equipment, what kind of equipment do you like to use?
For me, I mean, my go-to is definitely EVPs with audio recorders.
Yeah.
I mean, I even still have some old audio recorders that have cassette tapes in them, and to me, that is the best evidence. Not a lot of the staticky stuff you can get through stuff that's hard to translate and stuff, but when you capture clear voices through it, there's no denying that. I mean, I could, give you a million examples of audio. I could give you a handful of examples of video. Very rare you capture something that you could really say that's got to be something on video. It's tough, but I like to test out all the equipment when we're out on public stuff. Like I said, I have just about everything you could think of. I like spirit boxes. I have a portal that I got recently. I've used them before, but I just got my own, and it's fun to play around with. It's just a lot of that stuff I wouldn't bring into somebody's home because to me, it's not 100% evidence. I'm not
Right.
going to, I have an SLS camera, but I'm not going to go into somebody's house. I love them, but I'm not going to go into somebody's house and say, hey, you have a ghost here because I got a stick figure in your room, So I like to give them, I
Yep.
like to give them the best we can, and really try to help them, because a lot of them are scared. Some of them don't mind, but some of them are scared.
Yeah.
Yeah, the SLS camera, it's a big controversy.
Yeah.
Some people totally don't believe it. Some people do believe it.
Right.
We've had experiences with it that
We've-
it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So there's that big question mark, but I believe that the recording of the voice is the most
hmm
prompt and the best thing. That is your evidence, because no one else is in the room and it's talking back. You can't really debunk that. That's a
Right.
hard one to
Right.
say that,
No,
everything else,
absolutely.
spirit box and all these things, I'll tell you straight out. The K2 meter I can make go off with the cable TV remote on a different floor.
Right.
The REM pod I can make go off with texting. I mean, the cell phones.
Yes.
It was a lot of trial and tribulation with, we've had a lot of teams at home, and we've debunked a lot of stuff too, because
Sure.
it's nice equipment. Equipment's fun to use. It is
Yeah.
fun. I'm like, wow. But when you see what's going on with who changed the channel, here's a perfect example for the listener. Those LED lights they sell that change colors? You can stick them to the wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know that if you change a cable remote and it's on that frequency, it's going to change the color as well?
I have it here. It's hard to see, but I have in the back, I have red lights that go around the whole room. And every time I use my remote from my TV, it changes the color of the lights.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I saw something the other day that I feel bad. I forget the guy's name. It was on Facebook. And every once in a while, I'll see somebody post something that's an actual investigator that does research and tries to debunk and tries to find things. And he had something that was so great. And I asked him if I could take the video to use it for things. There's a lot of things I don't like. And I don't like the little flashlight trick where you unscrew the cap of the flashlight until it's barely making a connection. And then you ask questions and it goes on and off. It's too easy to debunk. You're breaking an electrical connection. So sometimes it's going to connect, sometimes it's not. And a lot of people argue about it. And somebody had it where they showed you how you could be in a room, and depending on the temperatures, the actual case of the flashlight, whether it's metal, whether it's plastic, can contract or expand. And he took a hairdryer on low setting and put it on the flashlight, and then the flashlight lit up because it extracted and it made the connection. It touched the connection, so it went off. He turned the thing off and it went off again. It's crazy. There's so many things like that. And could it be something at times? It can be, but I
Right.
like to rule things out first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I like to rule it out. And if you're going to sleep with one eye open at night, you better make sure it's the real deal.
Right.
Otherwise, it will bother me. And but I tell the listeners, like, people would ask me, and I'll ask you, if someone says to you, well, prove it. Prove that ghost exists. How would you prove it to anybody? Do you have a full body apparition picture?
That's a tough question, because unfortunately in this industry, there is no 100% proof. We have to go by what we've learned. Again, I've been doing this 30 years, so I have experience, I have education. We have to go by what we've learned. And when we capture something, if I show you something as evidence, it's probably as close to real evidence as possible, because I can't figure it out. I will never show something if I think, oh, well, it could be this, it could be that. It's tough, because you could show somebody audio, you could make them listen to audio and stuff like that, but it's hard for them to understand. They may hear something slightly different, or they may not. They if they don't want to. Honestly,
Yeah.
the hardest thing I have with people is going to their homes and convincing them it's not paranormal. Most of them now do not want to accept it. It's like, it's cool to be haunted, So, I mean, we want to help them, and we're there to help them, but you can't help everybody,
They think it's cool to, for their house to be haunted, or
Absolutely.
they just can't understand. They can't figure out, what's going on in the house.
Right.
And
Right. And It probably is the hardest thing we have to deal with is going in and, if we get people also that are, say, have a psychiatric illness or something that we believe, it's a very touchy subject, and that's why I say we counsel them and we talk to them for so long to get comfortable with us, because one, we're not doctors, so we cannot advise them that, hey, you may have schizophrenia. You know what I mean? We can't say that, even if I know you're showing the symptoms of it. But we can try to explain to them that, listen, we're here and we're showing you there is nothing paranormal. You have to look at other avenues. A lot of times people will come out and tell us, oh yeah, I haven't been taking my medication after 4 hours, and it's things that sometimes like that, sometimes they need us there to understand that's what it is. And then I could tell you people that have gone back on their medication, went back to the doctor, changed their medication, did things and helped them, get better. But it's a tricky.
Yeah. And speaking of people who do have schizophrenia, like, how do we know that, what they are seeing and hearing is not the paranormal? Like, it's such a tricky.
It is.
You know what I'm saying?
Sometimes it can be both, because spirits and the rare cases of demons, they will attach to people who are kind of weaker minded that they can easily control.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to be careful. It can be tricky. Like, one of my main things is, if you're in a house and there's a family of people in there and only the one person is experiencing it, I'm already leaning a little more toward that. Not that a spirit can't only attach to one person, but usually they'll show some kind of sign, somebody will see something. So that's one thing that I start to lean toward to see. And then it depends on the person, because, like, say somebody who's schizophrenic, they're going to tell you a lot of the same things that a person has a ghost is going to tell you. I'm hearing voices, I'm seeing things, they're talking to me. The difference is, listen to what they're saying. Like, I've had people that'll tell you things that, oh, the spirit it's making me eat right. When I eat bad food, then it gets mad at me. Now, in all my years, I've never experienced a ghost that cares what you're eating. So when you start hearing specific things, I had a person, of course, I can't talk a lot about the stuff that we do in residentials. It's confidential, but I could tell you, we had a lady who was telling us she had 3 shifts of ghosts in her house that were running a restaurant in her home. Yeah, and they tapped into her smoke detector to get to her phone. So, like, when you could start hearing the way that they start kind of rambling on about things like that are so offbeat, that kind of will lead you to that. You have to try to listen to really what they're saying. And when you ask them about the equipment, if any of your own abilities, empath abilities, anything like that, that is the best equipment.
Yes.
Because that doesn't lie. And of course you can't prove it to somebody, but it doesn't lie.
I have a question. I have a lot of questions. Like, in our house, sometimes we feel like we're blocked to a lot of the things here. But then if when you put us somewhere else, we can pick up tons of stuff. Like, so can people get blocked to their, for their own?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I mean, I know people have learned how to tune it out. And some people maybe subconsciously block it. Like, for me, in my home, I do not play with my equipment. I do not play with my abilities or anything in the house, because you can bring something in that's not here. So it's possible that subconsciously you're blocking it in your home because you're trying not to be part of it. But I mean, I don't know anybody that's just been blocked in certain places. It's, I've never experienced that. I only try to turn it off.
I feel like sometimes you're like blocked off from.
Well, it doesn't show face. So sometimes when you're living with it so long that you don't know what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
That's the thing that, what happens.
That's it too. Like when I
we don't know the difference of energy after a while, because you're so soaked into it that you can't separate. So the pictures, you don't have a picture, right? About like a full. You ever capture a full body or not? Apparition?
I have two shadows that I captured down in the Keys at the Key West Cemetery. There were pictures. I was just walking home from being out on the main strip there, and it was like 4:30 in the morning, and this is years ago, and I always had my camera with me, and I was just shooting through the fence on the way back to the hotel, and I was probably 3 months later. I was looking through the pictures, and I captured, it was a full shadow of a person, and then in the next picture, it was in the next area, almost like it was following us. That's probably the best I've had of an actual, mostly shadows, not a full-blown apparition. I've seen some with my own eyes, but I've never captured them. The ones I saw were years ago, before I had camera phones and everything.
You know that the Amityville horror case, that little boy on the banister with those eyes. You think
Yes.
that's authentic?
Yeah, that's I've actually, again, Tim Yancey, who used to be on my team, he was best friends with George Lutz, and he's on all. If you watch any of the like Amityville documentaries on Discovery and stuff, he's in them because he talks a lot about it. He used to go around with George and talk about the Amityville. And as far as I can tell you from what I've talked to him about, that is a real photo. There's nobody there that discredits it. It was taken, I believe, by the Warrens in the home.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't know 100% who it was, but they had nobody that looked like that. It was a kid. They believe it was the son that was murdered in there. But it's never been proven kind of either way. It's never been debunked. But it's, from what I understand, it's a pretty real photo. I actually use that in my presentations a lot.
What kind of cameras did they use back then?
The teams that I worked with, they all had they used a lot of video. They had big shoulder mounted video cameras, a little different. And then they just had regular cameras that they just took pictures with, whatever they had. A lot. Some of them even had, back when I started, they had Polaroids. Yeah, they didn't have a lot of there wasn't a lot of the infrared technology back then. To take cameras were still kind of new back then. So to take like a disc camera or one of those old Instamatic cameras and try to convert them, I don't think people really knew a lot about converting them at the time. So a lot of them just use regular photos. Sometimes you'll see pictures that are actually taken off stills off the video. It was a little different. I mean, I wish we had some of that stuff, and then today I wish maybe some of it we didn't have.
Yeah. Let's talk about
the demon. Yeah, I want to talk about that, but I'm just curious too. Like, let's just say the home is haunted, that you've been to. In all these cases, you've been to obviously haunted locations, where it ain't just the people. So then, whatever you do to try to remove the spirit, the entity, whatever it is, where does it go?
Well, it depends on what it is. If it's something we could definitely identify, we can try to make it cross over if we believe it's stuck there. That's why if we have to go back a few times, we may do a little bigger investigation to try to figure out if we can find out a name or who it is or what it is, so that we could try to directly push it out. But when you cleanse with sage or Palo Santo or anything like that, you open the doors, you open the windows, and it will push it out of the house. And a lot of times what people don't understand, spirits, a lot of them, again, this is my belief and from my experience, they're either trapped here, they don't realize they're dead, it was a sudden death, a tragic death, they haven't moved on, they're afraid to move on, things like that. And sometimes they don't, like I say, when they're knocking something off the counter or they're making a noise, they may be telling you, hey, what are you doing in my house? It could be somebody who lived on that land 100 years ago, but I believe that if you tell them they are not welcome there, they do leave a lot of the times. Not always, especially if it's residual. If it's residual energy or residual spirit that's been in that house for hundreds and hundreds of years, it's going to be hard to move it on.
Or attached to the land.
Yeah. If it's attached, yeah. But I've had a lot of experience where just by telling them and using the intent and pushing it out, it doesn't come back. Again, it's also the people, as long as they're not bringing it back.
But where does it go?
That's a good question. But as far as I know,
Does it go to the next door neighbor's house?
It could. It
know,
could.
and really, it goes somewhere. You know, I ask you that because
Yeah.
There's that fine line, and we removed it. Okay, where does it go?
Right.
Plain simple. Where did it go? Don't make up something. Where did it go?
It's
because
your intent.
We know it exists.
Right.
We know that it's real.
Yeah.
Right.
This negative energy, this whatever it is, a soul or a demon, whatever you want to label it as, it has to go somewhere. We just keep putting our minds in make believe land, and it just disappears. I don't buy it 1%.
Right.
So then where does it go? Do you believe in heaven or hell, that it goes back to where it came from? Or do you believe that it roams the earth and goes after another family?
I believe a little bit of both. I do, because I do believe in, I grew up Catholic, and I do believe that, again, when I was saying about intent. So when you're saying your intent while you're doing this, your intent is telling it, like, or at least for me, my intent is telling it to move on, go to the light, go somewhere, go out of this, don't be stuck here. You know what I mean? So we are hoping that they are listening to us, and that's what they're doing. Nobody can be 100% sure, honestly. If I tell it to leave and it goes out and it goes to the neighbors, I really don't know. I can't say.
Yeah.
I'm going by, again, I think if we pushed it out, I don't believe it would just go to the neighbors. I think it would eventually come back. I think it would hang around and come back.
Yeah.
That's what I believe. And that's why I say, like, we do keep in touch with people and we teach them how to do it. But yeah, it's a tough thing. I understand what you're saying. It's, we do try to pass them on as much as we can if we think that's what it is. But even that, how do you know they really went? They don't tell you,
Well, look at that movie, The Entity. That was back in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
She went to the neighbors, I think it was, and then it followed, and then she went somewhere else, and it followed, and then and look, to the listener out there, some of this stuff is hard to believe, but I will tell you that it's true. And everything cannot be proven because we want proof of everything, but it does happen. And some of these things will follow you or follow people that it's called an attachment. They may just go and affect somebody else in different ways.
Right.
In these cases, like you said before earlier in the show here, there's a lot of fluff to the movie world because fluff is entertainment and makes you watch it. But there's a lot of truth. Mm-hmm. There's underlining truth that these things do exist, and they have a signature to them and what they do. Right. And some of them, attachments. Have you ever went home with an attachment?
Yeah. We've dealt again with the demonic side of it. No, not onto a person, but spirit. Yeah, we've had some that were attached to an actual person. It wasn't doing stuff in the house. We're doing specifically to them. And again, we do the cleansing and everything, and it worked pretty good, But yeah, you don't know where it goes, and there is a lot of, like you said, a lot of fluff in the movies and everything. But the stuff is here; it is real. If you see a movie based on a true story, that the true story had something to it. Right. It may not be the whole story, but it had something to it. It's just it's not something everybody experiences, and even in your home, you're not going to experience. Look, I've gone to places and been there for, in an abandoned place for 5 hours with 3 people and 10 cases of equipment and captured nothing. So if you put that on the TV, nobody's going to watch it. Exactly. I would, because I know that's what happens, but nobody's going to watch that. So you have to have drama. I mean, look at the shows and look at like Zach. He they panic when they see something. I've done this for so long. I've had things touch me, and I don't jump. I don't get scared, because just from how long I've been doing it and how many experiences I have.
That comes with experience too, because the natural person would be like, it's kind of hard not to like jump up. I mean, I have to say that I get scared sometimes, and I'll be the first to admit it.
I don't. It's not that I never. Not that I never, but it's rare.
Yeah.
Have you or anyone on your team at a removal process or trying to cross the spirit over had some sort of intelligent conversation through either a spirit box, Ouija board, voice recorder, where they're not just giving you 1 or 2 words, they're saying why they're there and why they feel like they're stuck there?
I haven't had straight out conversations, but I did have one. It wasn't with my team here. It was when I was still back in New Jersey, and it was in a home, and it was attached to this lady, and we were trying to. It would not tell us anything. Would not tell us who it was. But every time we tried to get it to cross over and talk to it, it just kept saying. I mean, clear as day, it just kept saying no, 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 no. Until we kind of kept doing it, kept saying, and kept forcing it, and then it disappeared. We had her doing it. We had her doing the intent and in her head telling it to leave, that she didn't want it there. And that was one of the times I say I went back 3 times. And then from that point, it was maybe a couple years later, and she still hadn't had any problems after that. But it wasn't giving me sentences. It wasn't giving me, the things we're really looking for. It kept saying no, and the no was clear as day. It wasn't just the noise that I was interpreting as no. That's why you love to hear more than one word. Then you kind of, you want to hear something. Look, we all want to find that piece of proof that you could go, you cannot deny this. And it's tough. It is tough.
It's very tough. Like yourself, I was the same way. I would just try to discredit everything because, quite frankly, I don't believe anybody. But until you experience it yourself, and then you're like, wait a second now. Now I see something is going on. And then you start to listen to people and say, okay, you know what? Here's the similarities. Here's the patterns. These things do exist. These are what they trigger off. And some people, there's oppression, possession, very rare cases, but I've seen it.
Right.
And then there's the unfortunates where, you've been in a lot of cases. I've seen a lot of misfortunes. And I don't know if you have, but when I asked you about where does that spirit go or that entity go, I'm stuck on that in a way because there's also tragedies that do take place. Whether we want to believe in it or not, or we say it's coincidence, some of it's factual. That
right,
like Ron DeFeo, for example, in the Amityville Horror, I use him as a perfect example. I mean, the father was well-to-do, had money. The son went off. He had a drug, alcohol. I always say evil finds its weakest link. It'll go after the weak link and take that, and that'll take down everybody. And that's exactly what happened. It was the perfect, unfortunate storm of a whole family. But that's not the only case. There's so many cases similar to that you have to wonder, especially the guy, I don't know his name. He had the police went to the home and they found the organ playing or piano, his horror music playing, and he killed the whole family and then moved to another state. This other guy, I don't remember his name, and then the neighbor recognized him from one of those TV shows.
Wow.
But he went crazy upstairs, right? So these things know how to go after people.
And it goes after families too that already have problems like Amityville.
So I guess the question then would arise, would you recommend that after a cleansing that the family gets spiritual counseling as far as whether their belief is Christian, Catholic, whatever they believe in, and go in that realm?
Absolutely. They should always do. It's like anything. It's like an illness, a tragedy, an addiction. Any kind of after help is good to learn and to know a little more, because again, it's not about a specific religion. And everybody, even on my team, everybody's a different religion. So it's not about that. But you have to know, like when I go into a home, I learned that because everybody is different religions and they don't want to. Some of them aren't religious at all, and they don't want anything to do with religion. So every person I go see, I bring crystals with me, and I give them to them. Because no matter what religion you are, no matter what, really, a crystal is a spiritual thing, and they could keep that, and it makes them feel a little protected, and helps them. So, yeah, I believe that. I mean, we even provide it, like, as much as I'm not, a spiritual counselor, but in a way we are. So when we go there, and if they need to contact us afterwards, we'll go back, we'll talk to them, even if it's not on just the paranormal level, just they need somebody to talk to, because now they understand us and they know that we're not judging them. And because, some of those people, they can't talk to anybody. Everybody thinks they're crazy, even in their own family.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, isolation, depression, anxiety, stress, and then everybody believes that they're nuts and they're not nuts, and they have a hard time proving it because And it's a whole,
yeah.
you can't
Now,
prove some of these things.
I have a question. Say you go into a house and there's a lot of activity there, paranormal activity, and
Right.
there's a lot of kids, there's teenagers, there's little kids. And what if you don't have, because like you said, everybody's got to do like a job to help themselves to get rid of whatever's there. What
Right.
if you do not have every child or person living in the house on board with doing what you have to do to help yourself?
It's tough. It's tough because we talk to them at first and we tell them everybody has to kind of be on board. I mean, I've had people contact me and they're like, I live with my parents and their parents aren't, they don't agree to this and they don't really want to have you here. And I go, it's not going to work.
Exactly.
You need everybody. You really do need everybody on board. If they're young kids, of course, a lot of them aren't going to fully understand and you don't want to scare little kids, but
But if you're older kids,
yeah. But we tell them a lot of times first, even when we're on the phone with them, listen, understand that a demon is extremely rare. And if this is paranormal, it's not going to harm you most of the time. It's very rare that paranormal will physically attack so most of the time it calms them down a level at first. I'm not saying a spirit can't attack somebody, but in my experience, most of the time the spirits were not there to attack somebody. They were there more to kind of let you know they're there, or they weren't. If it's something attacking somebody, it's probably more on the demonic side, or they say, what is a spirit? It's an earthborn person that kind of crossed over there and is hanging around. So if they were a grumpy, grouchy, violent person, why wouldn't their spirit be the same way? So
exactly.
that is true. But
That
for
is
the
true.
most part, they don't have that, I think, that amount of energy to fully harm you like, say, a demon does, because it's a completely different type of entity.
And how
You
do you
know?
tell the difference? Like, when you go into a residential house, how do you automatically know that
Well,
it
I
could be?
I think because I've had some experience with them, I can sense it a bit. It's a very different type of feeling.
Yeah.
And even though a demon will start in the infestation phase, which is kind of like a haunting, it may make some noises, it may knock on the walls, it may do certain things to kind of let you know it's there. There's a few signs that you can look for. It's always in threes. The knocks, the thing, it might scratch you, it might do things like that. Most of the time, though, in my experience and education on it, I did a lot of reading on demonology and everything. They don't hang around like a ghost. They're going to be there a little bit at first to try to get you to trust them and believe that maybe there's somebody else. A lot of times, it comes through a Ouija board, a seance, a cult, things like that. But they're there with really one of two intentions: to harm you or have you harm somebody else. They don't have a lot of patience. So they're not going to sit there for 6 months to a year just knocking on your door and making a noise on the window. And that's not really what they're going to be there for. They usually come out pretty quick. And when you go into a home that has a demonic presence, if you do, demons react to religious provocation. So if I was to pull out a cross or use a little holy water or something like that, it usually will show itself a little more, because that's what they react to. A demon isn't going to go from sage. You're not going to sage a demon out of the house, and I can't get rid of a demon. I know a lot about them and I know how to, deal with them a little bit, but I need help for that. I'm not,
No.
I'm not part of the clergy. I can't really, perform an exorcism or anything like that. I would never even try.
And your thoughts and experience, where did demons come from?
Well, I mean, again, it comes from studying and my background as a Catholic. I believe they're fallen angels. I do believe they were, never an earthborn person. They are some kind of full-on dark energy or a fallen angel that is not there for good at all. And again, they are rare, but they're there. They're definitely there.
Do you think a really negative entity could turn that way, like kind of turn demonic, because I don't know how to put this, because they're so.
Well, demon's a demon. He says they never were.
Right. But if you had like, yeah, if you had like a spirit that was like maybe an angry person or something, I don't think they could turn like that, because again, I don't think a spirit has that type of full on energy to where they could, like throw the couch, what I saw, I've never seen that. I've only seen, if you go to a house and, there's one thing they talk a lot about, poltergeist. And, especially in parapsychology, they talk a lot about the studies of poltergeist, and that a lot of studies have found that poltergeist activity was done by self-manifestation, especially when you have teenagers, preferably female teenagers, as they're going through, puberty and everything. The energy, the negative energy that they're putting off actually creates and manifests into a poltergeist-like activity in the house. They've done a lot of research on that. So, there's again, you see things knock over or maybe something falls off the shelf, but a demon has more energy, more power that I've seen to move things and to actually cause damage.
So, what's your thoughts on demons and the spirits that you try to remove? Are they in the same plane, or they're on different planes?
I would tend to believe they're on different planes. I mean, again, who really knows? But I would think they have to be, because how could they coexist with each other on that same plane? A demon is definitely way more powerful than a spirit. So why wouldn't the demon just destroy all the spirits? You know what I mean? I don't know. Obviously we don't know, but I would think they have to be on a different plane. Just my thoughts.
It's another question mark, because I've dealt with paranormal investigators, and some of the conversations that were heard through audio, and we had mediums doing Ouija boards at the same exact time. Some of these cases, it's the spirits that we have to go with. He's coming. And then in the recording, you hear these growls. And then we had people who actually worship the devil to see, is this actually one of these demons running after that spirit? Sometimes they look, again, we don't know. We don't know. But from what we've heard on these recordings, that's what it sounded like.
Right.
It sounded like one too many times that the innocent didn't know where to go, and they were being chased by these entities. And they have these names. Like, I won't say them on the air, but they have the names. And we wanted to also study people that believe and worship the devil, because if you're going to understand demonology and you're going to be a paranormal investigator, then you better learn everything. Because if you don't learn everything, you're narrow-minded, then you're fooling yourself, because you don't know who you're dealing with.
Yeah, that's what I try to do. I try to learn. I have just about every book that they make. I've gone to every course I could find. And you know what? I say even the dumbest of books that may be out there has something in it that you may never have heard of or thought of.
Yeah, that's true.
Everything really is good to learn. I'm working on 2 books myself right now. I've never written before. This is my first time. I'm doing one on residential investigations and one on public investigations, and trying to put together a really true guide on how to do it, especially with the residential, on how to counsel people and how to deal with it when it's other things. 'Cause a lot of times teams go in there and, maybe they learn from watching TV, which is fine as long as you do your own research. You know what I mean? Learn from the TV, get into it, and then go learn on your own before you go to people's homes.
I agree.
They go in and they stir stuff up, and then they don't know how to get rid of it or what to do, and they leave. And I've had a lot of cases that were because people before me riled up everything in the house and didn't know what to do, and then left them like that, which is just so wrong.
You've been a fascinating guest. We're at the end of the show. Where can people find you? What do you have going on? We definitely want to have you back, because we have a lot more questions. We found it to be a very knowledgeable show. So to the listener out there, there's a lot of knowledge in this show. So please share it and listen to it very carefully, because there's a lot of good things in there we're learning tonight. Again, really quick, where can people find you and all that good stuff?
First, if you happen to be local to South Florida, on May 7th, I'll be at the Coconut Creek Library. We're doing a big presentation over there. They just finally did live shows again. So we're going to be there on May 7th from 2 to 3 p.m. And that's the North Regional Library in Coconut Creek. You can find out more information on our website. It's persfl.com. On Facebook, the same thing, persfl.com. Persfl. And we usually have everything updated on there. Those are the two best ways to find us.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. This has been an awesome show.
Yes,
and
definitely.
Julie, wrap it up.
All right. We want to say special thank you to Carnation for sponsoring the show. We love them. Thank you so much. And join us next Monday night on the United Public Radio Network on 105.3 FM from New Orleans. And stay tuned for Trish Mo with The Missing Piece.
Everyone have a safe, great night. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you, Bill.
Stay tuned.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
You too.
Bye-bye.